Record. Hey, Jesil, how are you?
I'm really good.
How's Wellington?
Thank you so much. And yeah, kia ora. Lovely
Wellington?
to see you.
How's
Amazing.
Wellington? How's Wellington?
The weather is as usual.
Windy.
It's wet and windy, but really warm inside the house.
All right. Okay. So
how's your weather out there?
It's also raining and it's cold, like you can see. I'm not wearing my jacket. I mean, jersey. Anyway, so before we start, I'd like to sort of introduce a guest, for our Super Pinay in Aotearoa, New Zealand sort of program. So Jesil, she's from Wellington, and she's she's everything. Like, she's pretty much like great. She's a lawyer. She has a radio program. She's very active in the community. But I'm not going to be telling you what she's doing, because that's the purpose of this interview. So Jesil, I think maybe if you can start with telling our audience or our viewers about your journey to Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Thank you so much, Tita, Mom Dedeth.
No, Mom. No, just
okay.
Tita.
All right. Tinako to Katua, mayong adlaw, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. My name is Jesil Cajes. I was born in the Philippines and I came to New Zealand in 2010. I moved here working as a teacher in Titay Rafiti region, which is in Gisborne. I worked there for the first year as a teacher, and then in my second year through to my 7th year, I work as the principal or the head teacher of that school. And in 2017, I moved to Wellington to study law. And now I'm working as a lawyer, specializing in family law based in the capital of New Zealand, Wellington.
Nice, thank you, Jesil. You know what? I didn't even know about that story about you coming in as a teacher. All I thought, like, you came here to study, straight away, study law. But
yeah, many people don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, I'm interested because you probably know I used to work at the Ministry of Education, so that, like, oh wow. Anyway, awesome. I know that you're very very active in a lot of things. And I'd like you to tell our viewers a little bit more about your radio program, because that's pretty awesome. It's you've been connecting a lot of our communities, migrant communities and ethnic communities, or maybe not just, but pretty much like everyone connecting. So tell us a little bit more about that, and how did you start that? Like, what triggers the setting up of that radio program?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really cool. The radio program is actually happened by accident. So it's called. I'm at Hut City FM. So it's a radio. It's a radio based in Lower Hutt, one of the cities as well in Wellington region or in New Zealand. And I was interviewed as a guest because they had this episode about knowing the different community groups that exist in Wellington. And they rang me and said, okay, Jesil, can you tell us about the Multicultural Council in Lower Hutt, as well as the Filipino community? So I went in, I was interviewed, the station manager was also there. And after the interview, he said, would you like to have a program here at the station? And I said, no, because I don't have experience. I felt so inadequate, really, to be a radio host. And then fast forward, after 2 months, he rang again, the station manager. And I said, okay, why not? Like, I will give it a go, but I would like to expand it a little bit more, not just focusing on Filipino, but as knowing New Zealand, how diverse we are. As we know, Dideth, we have over 213 ethnicities in New Zealand. And I said, why don't we use this platform to actually give voices to different cultural groups and also diverse groups, not just culture, but as well as people having different sexual orientation, or people who have different ideas, so that's how it happened. And it's been a year now, and I think a year and 5 months. So we started in February last year, and then, yeah, it's still going strong. And I feel like, even if I wasn't really prepared to start the program, I learned a lot as I go through the journey, knowing the stories of different communities, as well as discussing issues that matter to New Zealanders. So it's not just about different cultures, but what, the issues that really matter, like we discussed about recent laws like abortion, or like euthanasia, all that kind of things. So as it happened, yeah. So it's really a platform for communities to increase that understanding and appreciation of what they're doing, and also their culture. And our goal really is to bridge that gap of understanding, because, it's a diverse Aotearoa. We always say it's a diverse community, but I think as a diverse person, we also have to be proactive of actually being the source of the, educating the people around us that it's okay to be ethnic, it's okay to be brown. We're not a threat to this country, and it's okay to be different. And I am really proud being a Filipina.
Yeah. So how like, I know you just said it's a year and a half or so, and you have interviewed so many people. Do you know how many you have interviewed? Did you count how many you've interviewed, and what sort of
the yeah,
diversity?
It's probably over 100 now.
Oh, wow.
Yes, because when I look at my I got this page on Canva. I think it's over 150 people that we've interviewed so far. Yeah, so it's really phenomenal.
And this is just you by yourself. You don't have any researcher. You don't have anyone. It's just you doing everything.
No, it's kind of like a one-woman show. You control, the music, and then you research the topic. And I think the hard part, really, the most challenging part for me is actually designing those questions. Because for me to be able to ask effective questions, I really have to know the topic. So I'm forced to actually understand, to research about it. Like, for example, euthanasia law, I really have to understand both sides so that I can present it in a way that inform the people.
Yeah, I guess your background in the education as well as your study of law would have helped you, informing, that also like just even, I guess, the path that you're taking the program, into. So I wanted to focus. I wanted to go back to that from education, being sort of a principal or a head teacher, to studying law. What was the motivation? What was the trigger for you to go into that space?
The trigger that really shifted from education to law is I really wanted to make a difference. And I think we go back to, it's so huge and big, right? And it's very, everybody wants to make a difference. But I think from my experience as a leader of a particular school, so when you run a school, one of your responsibilities is actually implementing regulations and implementing policies. So my goal is actually, how does this particular policy look like in practice, right? And then say, for example, healthy eating, or example, bicultural education, what does it look like in practice? And I think the biggest trigger really was the budget. Like there was a cut of funding at that time between 2010 to 2014. It was really tough. And there are also some policies that teachers are allowed to have 2 hours non-contact, and the rest of the hours are actually contact on the floor. And I think you're very familiar with this term. Basically, you only have 2 hours per week to prepare your curriculum and also to do assessment to your students. And this is legal. This is really just the minimum requirement. And I said, this is not good. And also cutting of the budget, this is also not good. And over the years, I have seen the effect of the lack of budget to education. I have seen our students not coming to school because they don't have, one, they don't have food. That's poverty. And Gisborne, there's a lot of poverty there. So I had a first encounter of what poverty looks like in New Zealand, which is not different really from the Philippines in terms of hunger. And second one, a lot of our students didn't come to school because they don't have transportation. And a lot of this, it affected really their attendance and their consistency. So I said, well, maybe there has to be better way of doing this. And the only way to do this is to actually change the policies and the law. And then I realized that you can't do it, even if you're a lawyer, because as a lawyer, all you have to do is to interpret the law, you know? So anyway, that was the trigger for it.
All right.
So I was hoping coming to Wellington, I can effect change by, you know, we need to do better regulations or maybe legislations, because in practice, the final receiver of these legislations are actually the students, the teachers, the communities, the stakeholders, and sometimes it does not work. But I have no choice but to do it. So yeah.
Oh wow. Oh wow. That's pretty awesome. I guess there will be, I'm sure you know, there may be some other ways of getting that influence in terms of policy, you know, a different sort of level. Maybe that's something that you should think about. Maybe let's talk about that later. But I thought, you know, you are very active in the community as well as in terms of policy making. There are ways of influencing. I know it's not just being a lawyer, but maybe even running, you know, for something, running in public office.
I'm gonna run from here to there, but it's raining, so I can't.
Anyway,
I haven't been exercising for a while, so yeah.
Let's talk about that in maybe in a different conversation. But I'm really interested in where you're currently at now as well. So you did say you've finished your law. You're now a solicitor at a law firm and focus on family law. So I think for us Filipinos, and I recall you know, there are a lot of migrants and not just Filipinos, but a lot of migrants who sometimes doesn't know the importance of having a will or having you know, the power of attorney, it's general power of attorney or the enduring power of attorney. And I think for tonight, that is what I wanted us to focus on and to be able to sort of help our kababayans in particular, but you know, the importance of having such a will or an EPOA. So I'll give you the floor. I know that you have a presentation and I give you the floor you know, to show your presentation, because I think it's important. People can have a view, have a look into that presentation later on. So yeah, give you that opportunity.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to, it's a very brief, actually. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, brilliant. So this is really just very simple, and you're right. One of the areas that we do as a family lawyer is the importance of wills and enduring powers of attorney. Majority of our work at McWilliam Tyree, that's where I work, based in CBD. We are court lawyers, so we go to court for people that fail to have wills, or also for people that have enduring powers of attorney, but many other things like separation, divorce, dissolution, kidnapping, all that kind of family problems. So at this time, I'm just really happy to share about the wills and enduring powers of attorney. Coming from Philippines, our culture, we are very collective culture. We don't really need a will when you go to the Philippines. Like my parents don't have a will because we know it's automatic. The entitlement is automatic. But in New Zealand, the culture is very much individualistic. So without consent is really important here. And that really is evident the way we deal not only in institutions, but as well as in legal capacity as well. So what is a will? A will is basically our plan when we die. If you own a property over $15,000, my advice is to get a will, because if you don't have a will, it is very difficult for your beneficiary. And so basically that's your legal plan, how your property, or we call it estate, will be divided after you die. and you work hard for all these properties. So it's really important that you actually make plan where to, how to, and who to go to this will. But the question would become, is it mandatory to have a will? No, it's actually not. But again, if you die without a will, one example, Matilda here in Wellington, our client, she got married 25 years ago. The husband died 8 months ago. The husband died without a will, and we called him intestate. And she now goes to court to ask an administrator to administer the will because the husband died without a will, and she has now spent $10,000 even without, in just a preliminary stage. That means that there is no court hearing even.
But
so
it's not expensive. I mean, like as you were saying, this is just even preliminary.
Yes, that's correct.
Work,
yes,
and you already spent like $10,000 for that. Wow.
It depends on the situation, but in her case, because the husband had previous children from previous had children from previous marriage, so the children are now fighting, and the wife, she is going to fight as well, of course, because the property that they lived there for 25 years, and now the children, they're all adult now, they wanted to have a share of that, and according to the interstate law, they will have a share. So that's gonna, and if they can't agree, if they can't reach a settlement, how much would go and how much would belong to the wife, then they will have to go to court, and the court will make that decision. And basically that is tough for us because to have a will, it's really easy. It only costs you between $250 to, I don't know. And at this stage, you have no control how your assets will be distributed. What does it mean? You have no control because the law that applies when you don't have a will is a different law, and that's what we call intestacy legislation. So basically it is a matter of priority, whereas if you have a will, you can determine how your assets will be distributed, and that will be honored by the court as long as you have done it properly, you have done it within the context of what is required in a will. But again, the law that applies when you don't have a will is different. And or if there is no one that would claim your assets, it will just go to the IRD. So yeah, it's really important who can make a will. Anyone who is 18 years old, and if they are under 18 but they are married or in a de facto relationship, they can do it. And really important is you have to do it when you still have that sound mind or mental capacity. So if you leave it so long, and the lawyer may suspect, oh, I don't think you have mental capacity, then what would happen is there will be other process, and you need a court order. If there is a court involved, it involves lawyer, it involves judges, and again, money. And it's a long-winded, long process and expensive, and we don't want that for anyone. Well, when to make a will? When to make a will? Now, really? Or when you get divorced or separated? Because once you get divorced and you had a previous will, then that will becomes invalid. And also when you get married or when you enter into a de facto relationship, because the law changes, your properties will be divided differently. So you also have to make a will when you get married, because your will when you were single, that becomes invalid. Or when you have children, it's important to make sure that the children are provided for in the will, because we have a moral obligation for our children. All right, so that's the will basically. And enduring powers of attorney, that's a different plan. Again, enduring powers of attorney is different from the will, because the will is your plan when you die, whereas the enduring power of attorney is your plan when you are still alive, but you could no longer make those decisions for your affairs or even for your properties or wealth, maybe because one, you lost mental capacity, or maybe two, you are in accident and you are in comatose, or three, you cannot communicate anymore. There are some situations, Or number 4, you might have physical incapacitation, or maybe, say, for example, you're just overseas and you're stuck overseas, but you have some affairs or properties like house, lease, rent that needs to be managed in New Zealand. So that's really the important aspect of enduring powers of attorney. So there are 2 types of enduring powers of attorney. That's what we call personal, or that's your welfare. So say, for example, if something happens to you, you go to hospital, the first thing that the doctor would ask is, who is your attorney? Attorney is not a lawyer in this context. Attorney is someone that you appoint. It could be your husband, it could be your wife, it could be your children. They must be 20 years over, and they must have mental capacity. So they're basically someone that you trust, someone that knows you intimately a bit. So I would not recommend that you appoint someone like a lawyer or a professional that you don't know, because they need to really know. Say, for example, if something happens to you, would you like the plug to be taken out? Would you like them to hold on when, you know? So they have lots of powers, basically. So if you could no longer make those decisions, your attorney will make the decisions for you. So what happens if you don't have enduring powers of attorney? So an example from our case would be, say, father needs to go to the rest home, but he doesn't have enduring power of attorney, and then he has 3 children. So this is our case. He has 3 children, and then the child 1 said, I don't want my dad to go to rest home. Yeah, child 2, I said, I want my dad to go to the rest home. That's the best care for him. So the problem now then becomes, well, I want to be dad's attorney so that I can make that decision. And child 2 said, I want to be dad's attorney so that I can also make that decision. So children, they are fighting to go to court. Who would the court make that order? Or if ever in your affair, it's just your husband and there is no conflict, you know, it's just your husband who makes that decision for you, but you don't have that enduring powers of attorney, your husband will need a court order so that he will have that authority to discharge you. He will have the authority to consent to medical treatment and all that you need.
I just hold on, Jesil. I think that is very important, you know, to point out, because I think for us Filipinos, as you mentioned earlier, our culture is that we in the Philippines, we don't normally kind of like do that, because if your husband, or like, for example, I need this enduring power of attorney, and normally the husband will act on my behalf, but in New Zealand that it's not automatically the case. So you have to have the enduring power of attorney, and as you said, you have to get that court order so that you will be able to become the attorney.
You're very, very correct there, Matilde. That's really true. You either have that enduring power of attorney, so it's kind of like your insurance, you know. You're not wishing that it will happen, but if it happens, there is that document that will allow those people close to your heart to make that decision for you. And if they don't have that decision for you, they will have to go to court order. They will have to go through the court. They will, you know, there is a hearing, there is a lawyer involved, and then the judge will make that order. And they will have to be, they have to prove that, number 1, they are not on drugs. Number 2, they are really the people that can act on your best interest. And if the court is not satisfied, then the court may appoint somebody. It could be a social worker that will make that decision for you. I don't know, but again, it is a rigorous process. So I agree with you 100%, and you got it right, that it's important to do it now, because of course, for you to do it now, you need to have that mental capacity first. And again, you must be 20 years old or over. So
there's also, there's also the matter of cost to go into court, as you said, like you need lawyers, you need the judges and things like that. So that's another thing to be considered as well.
It's really, really expensive to go to court. And as a lawyer, it's good for us because it means money for us. But, you know, when you are a family lawyer, it's not about the money. It's actually seeing, you know, people come to you broken, damaged, you know, or they are in the most vulnerable situation. Can you just imagine these children, the dad is waiting in the hospital, but the dad can't be released because, again, out of those 3 kids, no one is authorized to actually take him to rest home, or, you know. So I think this is basically, when we go on holiday, we plan, right? Or, when we have a mortgage, we plan. When we want to buy a house, we plan. But we know that whether we like it or not, we're going to die, right? It is a destination for all of us. And I think it's important to have these things in order. And we can't always predict what's going to happen in the future. But for as long as we live in New Zealand, this will prevail. This will be the requirement as well. So it is tough. And but it doesn't mean that it can't be done. It's really easy to do. All you have to do is to talk to your lawyer, because for enduring powers of attorney, you will need a lawyer to do this, because there is like a certificate from a legal professional to make it valid. Whereas the will, you don't need a lawyer to do that.
Yeah, so you mentioned that's the personal. So is there another power of attorney?
Yes, that's what we call your property or financial affairs. And they're kind of like, they're like together, Matilde, because say, for example, something happens to you and you need money, in order to survive, right? You need money so that you can be released to rest home, or you can, basically you need money. And it's important as well that somebody will be able to do that. So you could have the financial matters is an attorney, involves an attorney that will have some power over releasing your funds. But the overarching principle here is your attorney can only act within the power given by law. And if the act outside that authority, and the family court has the power to review, say, for example, if the abuse, if we suspect that there is abuse, then we can take that matter to the family court, and then the family court can revoke, can cancel, or can continue that enduring power of attorney. So that's basically it. So what's the difference between enduring powers of attorney, personal, and enduring powers of attorney, property or financial matters? The personal will only kick in when you lose mental capacity or when you can't communicate anymore, like dead end. The personal can take effect now, right? When you still have mental capacity. And the reason for that is, one, very common sense, like say, for example, you are so alert, but you are physically incapacitated. So the person can just go to the bank on your behalf, right? Or so basically the property can take effect now without waiting for the mental incapacitation. But that's your option. But you can also say, I only want my attorney under financial matters to take effect when I become mentally incapacitated. But
you mentioned earlier that, for example, if you're overseas and there are some transactions that you need to do here, for example, here in New Zealand, so that property enduring power of attorney, is something that you can then use, for your power of for your attorney to be able to make transactions on your behalf.
Yes, they can rent, they can lease, they can remortgage, all of those, basically what you should be doing. So yeah, and their power is limited too, like they can only act for as long as it promotes your welfare and interest. Anything outside that, you can also put some conditions that, hey, I don't want my attorney to donate money to charity. So you can say that I don't want my attorney to make a will for me, so you can have all those conditions. So you can just say, well, I want my attorney to manage my property affairs, but these are the conditions that I don't give them, and you can also like revoke it, like your will, you can change it anytime, you can cancel it, you can revoke it. Say, for example, you appointed someone, say your partner, and then eventually something happens, then you can also change it. So it doesn't bind you, but what it does, it gives you peace of mind that, say, for example, you travel overseas, something happens to you, you know what I mean? So it's already well taken care of because you have someone to do it on your behalf. And the good thing about it is it has legal effect. It is legally binding. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Question around the will. So if, for example, I have a will and my husband doesn't have a will, what would be the consequence of that?
If he dies first, then in order to administer his properties, then you will have to apply to court, Tita. So say your situation, say for example, you don't have children, you are the sole beneficiary, then what you will need to do is you're going to apply to the High Court, what we call the letter of administration. So you're basically asking the High Court, hey, High Court, I am a beneficiary. Can I administer my husband so that all his properties will be released to me? So that's the simplistic way of doing it. If you die first and if you die first and you have a will, then that becomes easy for your husband, because all he needs to do, if he's the executor, is just follow. All he needs to do is bring your will to the court, and the judge will say, okay, let's have a look. Is it a valid will? It's a valid will. I'm going to give you the grant of probate. So the probate is an authority for him to start the division of your property. So it becomes really easy for him. Whereas for those people, beneficiary or wives or children, that the deceased was intestate or didn't have a will, it is hard for them.
There is another question, and I think these are some of the things that I do encounter when people are asking some questions about the will. Yes. And the separate, and this is in relation to trust. So a lot of, I think this is a reality, I think, for people, for Filipinas who are married to non-Filipinos. And most of the time, the property is in trust. And so what is the implication of that will? And I think this is important sort of discussion, so that our audience will be able to sort of understand the difference between a will and a trust, and what is the effect of that.
Yeah, I think if there is a trust, the first question would become, is it a valid trust? Say, for example, if you marry someone, a Filipino, a non-Filipino, and they created a trust for the purpose of defeating your claim of the property, then that is subject for a dispute, So you can actually say, hey, the trust was established mainly for the purpose of excluding me to benefit from it. So that's another law that will apply, and I can discuss it further if there are some further questions. So that's basically the basic. Well, if you have a trust, then the will must be consistent to what is the provision of the trust, right? So if the trust says that you have, you are a beneficiary, then it will just whatever really the deed or what is the provision of the trust, then that should be consistent to the will.
Yeah. So what if the trust? So, for example, the trust has been established way before you married, the non-Filipino. Is there sort of a recourse, I guess, around now? Like, for example, you're married to a Kiwi, and then a trust has been established way before you got married. And then you're not a beneficiary because you weren't married. What is the recourse, or is there a recourse, I guess, of Filipina to be included in as a trustee of a trust?
It is a complicated, I understand your question, really. It is a complicated situation. It will depend on the fact or the circumstance. The best way really is to we need to know the facts so we can provide proper advice. However, under relationship property law, 1976, if the trust has been established for quite a while, and then you as a wife have been together for a while as well. So basically your situation is the trust has been established well before marriage, and it continues during the marriage. And then what happened was you're not part of it. So you can still make a claim, and your claim would be, I have the interest of that trust because I have non-monetary contribution. The share of that trust or the interest of that trust might be that it can be considered as a relationship interests between, from the time you get married and from the time that, the husband died. So during this relationship, how much is the interest? You may have a claim in that capacity, but I would need a lot of
Oh yeah, yeah. So you
yeah.
need to as you said, there's a
Mhm.
need to understand all the facts,
Yes,
of the case. So
yes.
no. I think that even just that clarification is really important, because as I said, I do get lots of sometimes get to have some conversations with people who are in this situation, and
Mhm.
so it's good that you've made some, even just like a glimpse of what can be done, in that
Mhm. Mhm.
space.
Definitely.
Yeah, great. Is there anything more, Jesil, that you would want, to cover that we haven't really covered in terms of wills and enduring power of attorney? And I know that we've covered more than what we're supposed to be covering with the question around trust. Yeah, is there anything else?
No, I think that's all. And I just want to say, really, thank you so much, Matilde, for being a great role model for us migrants. I really look up to you, and you are doing really, really well. You're a great businesswoman. Whatever you put into your hands, it always prospers. So it's really great seeing you thriving there. And I really hope that one day you will, you are already going to places, but I can see that you are definitely going to higher places, and I cannot wait to support you, whatever that
Oh,
might be.
actually, it's the
And
other way around. I'm going to support you. Anyway.
I just
Uh,
I just really want to say, and organizing this interview and also giving content, valuable content to our Filipino ladies. This is not easy. I know the work behind the scene. I don't know how hard it is, but I know it is hard. But with all your leadership responsibilities as well, it is not easy. So I just want to honor you really on behalf of us, Filipina women all over the world. Really, I just want to thank you. You really you really inspire me to be better as a migrant here in New Zealand.
Well, thank you, Jesil. That's really lovely, lovely words from you. But I also see you, even if you're so much younger than me, that you're actually been doing a lot, in the community, and in all the sort of endeavors that you've been doing. And I recall when you were still studying at Victoria University, and you were leading, the Filipino organization in there. You've done so much to just really put the Filipino studentry, their, I guess, the culture, but not just the culture, but all the things that needed to be advocated for. You've done a lot when you were studying. So I really, really, actually admire you, for your perseverance and also your vision. So it's probably mutual. so
Yeah, it is
so
definitely.
that's,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
great. Is
Yeah.
there any sort of parting words, I guess, for our audience,
Hmm.
around, I think few things, for me from our conversation. One is, even just the journey, your journey from being a teacher to pivoting into law, so that's another area. The second area is the, from studying law and choosing family law, and not, other anything else, like law profession is huge, but you've decided to actually just focus now on family law. And so any advice on that? And the third, I know this is like so many questions, and the third one is around the will, that will and the
Hmm.
importance of it. So give you the floor, to say your parting words.
Thank you so much. Like all migrants, there's always like fear and uncertainty when you first landed in Aotearoa. But I think I just want to encourage all of you guys that we can do anything because we are women. The first seed of life comes from us. So we are really powerful, and not in a negative way, but we are strong and resilient. So whatever it is that you are wanting to do for so many years in your life, it's not too late. I was a mature student, and I realized that really there is always a space for you. There's always a space, and we may think that, oh, someone is doing better than I am. We don't have to compare ourselves because someone like you has always a space in this world, has always a space, whatever that might be, that you want to do. And women nurture in we thrive in nurturing each other. We thrive in supporting each other. So if ever you are thinking of studying law, hit me up. If ever you are wanting to be a teacher in New Zealand, hit me up as well. I can guide you the process, how to become a registered teacher here. And if ever you are in the verge of shifting, you're in a fork of your life, oh, should I go, should I not? You probably should go because that's an obvious reason that you should go and never look back. Also, as a lawyer, we definitely need brown, migrant, diverse lawyers in New Zealand. It's not too late. I had a classmate who is 65 years old. He used to be a principal in one of the departments in here in Wellington, and he's now 65 years old. He just retired and he's a lawyer and he's really happy now. So whatever that is, you just really go hard for it and you can do it. Also, for your wills and enduring powers of attorney, it's really cheap to do wills. All right, so we can do it for you if you want to do it, or if you have some questions, just email me or text me, that's okay. And if you decide to go to another lawyer to do it, it's completely fine. It's absolutely okay. So if you have some questions about wills, message me, and the time is now. Also, especially if you have children who are under 16 years old, my advice is to do it now, especially because children need guardian before they can go to school or before they go to a hospital or any medication. So you need to have someone that you put in there in case something happens to you. Also, for the enduring powers of attorney, you need to do it as well. It's just like an insurance, but you don't have to pay it every year. You can just do it once in your life. And that's basically it. And yeah, I just want to thank you all. It's a really great Kaupapa. It's a great program, Super Pinay. I think this is the first Filipino group dedicated to women, and I hope that we can collaborate and help each other, whatever resources we have. I'm just really happy to add value and to show support. So thank you so much, guys.
Wow, thanks, dagang salamat. So for those, so currently we have on our screen Jesil's details, like if you wanted to catch up with her or connect up with her. So her mobile, her email, Facebook, and please listen to her, radio program. That's really awesome. I've been interviewed, I think maybe once or twice.
Really well.
Short interview, but
You did really well.
Really awesome. Like she's just doing so well. So thank you very much, Jesil, and I look forward to collaborating with you in many days ahead.
Definitely, yes. If there's anything I can be of help, definitely, I'd like to be part of it.
All right, kakite.
Kakite.